my opinion, so much crime and lawlessness. What the Jamaat al-Muslimin would have been doing at the time would have been a lawless action that was outside of the law. But what redress is there for the common person, for the average man who doesn't have political links or otherwise, when the law itself is against what is right? You know what I mean? When the law is seen to be against what is right. And that's what you have to ask yourself. When the law only seems to operate for certain people, what does the common man do?
Growing up around, well, based on the timeline you gave me, how old would you have been around the time that your dad was going out, taking action against the drug pushers and so on?
I would have been, yeah, I would have been like 4 to 6.
Oh. Were you really conscious or aware of what was going on around you?
I was very conscious and aware of what was going on, and it's kind of surprising to me because now when I tell my parents this or that, they're very surprised that I understand what's going on. I remember one night my dad came and he had his hands out like this and he had a bullet in his hand and he had a flat disc in his hand. And I used to go outside and run in the night, and they said I was don't go outside because people used to pass and shoot at the mouth. And he said, you know what this is? I said, it's a bullet. He said, you know what this is? I said, no, that meaning the flat disc. He said, this is a bullet when it hit a wall. He said, are you as hard as a wall? Because he was trying to explain to me how dangerous it was because I didn't get it, you know? And that's one of my earliest memories of my father, like breaking things down to me. So I feel like I was very aware at the point in time of a lot that was going on.
While you're going through the motions of that, going to school, you interacted with other young boys, you probably see their fathers as well. Did it ever occur to you that, my dad may not necessarily be like everybody else's dad?
Well, remember from the ages of 0 to 6, I was living in the compound before
the
coup.
Okay. Yeah.
So my dad was like everybody else's dad who I know. I didn't have a normal life, whatever that means, in terms of that type of interaction. Police was kicking down our door or knocking on the door and pulling people out at least once a week. Army and soldiers surrounding the mosque everywhere, guns everywhere, that type of thing. People getting locked up, people getting dragged out of their houses. People being shot at, some people got killed. A lot of things was going on, but to me, looking back on it as a child, it was like a war zone, really. Right? Police would pass and they would shoot at the school, we would go under the desk, we'd come back up like if nothing happened, we'd go outside and run around and pick up the shells off the ground and that kind of stuff. This was normal life to us.
So this was routine for you?
This was very, very routine to us.
I mean, we may remember your dad or think of him in one light, but you know him as Daddy. A mentor, a guide, a protector.
Abu means father in Arabic.
Okay. Like, what are some of the, more folksy personal experiences, like, talking to him and, some of the advice he would have given you?
Yeah, my father's a fisherman. He's a man grew up by the sea, so he taught me how to fish. And that would be one major thing that would always, I always remember in my mind. But in terms of, like, old talk and thing, I don't think me and my father ever old talk. I don't think there was ever a conversation that wasn't based around some type of philosophy or something, even though we were kicks, but he's not a kicksy man, that way. So a lot of the life lessons my father has given me a very profound sense of justice. I've seen my father stand against things that what seemingly had no way of winning against, but just because it was the right thing to do. He's a man that I would describe as fearless as well, so he's kind of given me that in a way where if you're right, you're right. And, there's nothing that could be against you once you're right now, So, yeah, that type of stuff. To say me and my father, whether kicks are wrong, I don't know. It wasn't the kind of life he lived. It was somebody that always made us aware of how fragile life is and that you could go at any point in time. So it was important to live the type of life that you would be honored and respected for.
Leading up to the day itself, you said that you would have had some very harrowing experiences, gunplay and so on, that you would have incorporated as part of your life that really became normal to you. In the lead up to July 27th itself, can you remember anything from the days leading up to that, and if so, what?
That I don't remember. Because I think at that point, we just got accustomed to life as it was for us. All I remember is sitting right here on this floor and watching not just TV, obviously, and seeing the Imam on TV, and as children thinking it was a game and laughing or whatever. My mother literally hush, because she didn't know either what was going on, And from that moment, I think the real weight of what was happening began to sink in on us. I remember there was an explosion at TTT, and my mom put out my dad's funeral shroud on the line. And again, at that age, you're kind of not really aware fully, but just the air of suspense, the air of, there's danger in the air now. also us just not being able to just move around and function as normal.
Mm-hmm.
Because the police were looking for all the members of the mosque, any families who were attached or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So we were here for a while. But we literally had to run from here and go to Maracas, St. Joseph, deep in Maracas, to a family friend in order to stay there. And we stayed there for the better part of a year and a half, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Just the world was not a safe place for us to exist in. We knew that at that point in time.
Yeah.
You know, because even though we were innocent and we didn't do anything, there are many, many horror stories of families who were caught by the police, were beaten, all sorts of things happen to people.
But just wanted to clarify something here. You say that you used to live at the mosque, at the commune, at the mosque beforehand, and then during the events of the coup, you were staying here in Belmont.
For a while, just literally probably for, it might have been a month or two, maybe 3 months.
So you would have made the transition from Mucurapo to here in about the month before the
The day.
The day before.
The day before, my father probably told my mother to just come here. You know.
You know, that transition to you, did it seem strange at the time? You know, you're going to visit a relative or anything, or?
No, I mean, my grandmother, so we were always here.
Oh, okay, accustomed.
So it wasn't like, you know, just say what we going with my grandmother. It wasn't anything strange.
Mm-hmm. For the weekend, as the case may be, because I think it was on a Friday.
You wouldn't question it, you know.
Yeah.
So,
And when was the last, can you remember the last time you saw your dad before the coup itself?
my memories of him are very staggered at that time. It's just, you know, I mean, again, I was very young, so it's just things I can pick out. You know, we had a plant shop. He was very good with his hands. He's a carpenter. He builds things. He might take me on his job at different points in time. But as a child, the memory is blotched. It's not anything that I can string together. So to say that I can remember the last time before I saw him, I don't think I was old enough to hold that kind of memory.
Yeah. Well, you said one of your memories of the insurrection itself was watching it on TV. And you also remember seeing your mom bringing out your dad's funeral shroud and bringing it here. At that age, knowing that that's a funeral shroud, knowing that there's something out there you're not fully 100% sure of, but at the same time you know it's something serious. How did that make you feel?
No, I mean, people can look from the outside and have their views about, you know, whether the coup was right or whether it was wrong, whatever. But at the end of the day, that's your father. You know what I mean? This is somebody that has cared for you from birth, has raised you. You know, so you just begin to kind of understand the gravity of it. You couldn't lose somebody that you care about. And at this point, even though we have been close to death in terms of seeing it around us and understanding it, it's not somebody that was close to you. That's a whole other translation now. It becomes so much more real. And I think as a child, I went inside at that point. I became very kind of introspective and quiet because I started to think about what my position was. What was my role now? You know, my mother, my two sisters, me being literally the only boy for like 3 generations in this family. You know what I mean? So.
You describing that. Was it the night itself on Friday that you all made the move from Belmont to Maracas, or did it take some time?
Coup?
Yeah.
No. We were here for probably about 2 or 3 months.
And then you all made the move to...
the move. I remember very distinctly my mother not being able to wear a hijab and lying down the back seat, in that space between the back and the front seats in the back of the car, lying down there. And again, all those things started to reinforce in my mind just what was going on. It was the first time I had seen my mother without hijab outside.
So you knew it had to be something
It
serious.
had to be something really serious, you know.
So during the events itself, you would have been in Belmont, which is more or less around Port of Spain side itself. Did you hear any gunfire, any explosions?
Gunfire, we had explosions. We know that there were police on top of the Hilton. We were right here. We saw smoke come out of town, all of that stuff. So, you know, we had an idea that something, I mean, TTT's right here. So, you know, when that explosion went off, it rocked here too. We felt it, you know what I mean? So, all those different things. I mean, again, my brain, as a child, you pick and choose somehow. Your memory doesn't pick up everything and keep it. So there's no way I could describe to you those days. But there was a very kind of ominous feeling, you know. My dad and they did call here from TTT to ask us what we wanted to see on TV. So, for people seeing all them cartoons for them 6 days.
Seriously?
That was us, yeah.
Wow. Because that was one of the things I wanted to ask you too. You know, you're hearing all that is going on outside there. You don't know what is going on 100%. So naturally, you're only fearful for your dad's well-being. You know, is he okay out there? What's going on? But he did have communication with you.
Yeah.
You know.
I think he called here a few times. I just remember one call. And I remember them asking what we wanted to see on TV.
Wow. Did you talk to him directly?
I don't remember.
No. But you know,
probably did though.
But you
No,
know
we
he
didn't.
was okay.
Yeah, we knew he was okay. I mean, yeah, I also remember how we grew up. We kind of grew up with this sense that, death is not something to be feared in that way. And
Mm-hmm.
although you understand the seriousness now when it's somebody that's close to you, it still was almost like this is part of life. This is just, and our parents never encouraged us to be fearful of death or to cry about it or whatever. We understand death as a transitionary period as Muslims. We don't treat death in the way many people do. We
Mm.
don't seem to have an understanding of it. People crying and bawling and acting in that way. We understand the transition of it. It's just another part of life.
It's not necessarily taboo for you.
It's not. It's not taboo. And for many different ways of life that come from mostly from the East and stuff. Eastern ways of thinking. Yeah, they don't see death as that. Death is another stage
Mm.
in a long, long stage of things.
Were you all well stocked with supplies, grocery, and food and stuff while you were here?
I would say my grandmother is a well-connected woman, so um, yeah, we were good. I don't think there was any point in time where we were starving or I don't recall, except when we left here and we were alone. I know like there was a network of wives, and my mom would kind of reach out to people and stuff. And I remember very distinctly going to like a lot of the markets and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and anything that they would deem not fit for sale or whatever, we would take stuff and put it in boxes, and then we would go through it and like throw away what really couldn't be used, and what could be used we would like cut out pieces of potato and different things. Like we went on this whole drive of being able, and my mom would then drive around and give
Mm.
to different people and that kind of stuff, and we would keep for ourselves. So I knew at that point it was difficult. Obviously she couldn't be she wasn't hired by anybody,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't find a job at the time. She had 3 young children, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I think around 1990, late 1991, things began to kind of change a bit for us.
Mm-hmm. We hearing these things here, and you're relating, a really harrowing story about your childhood here.
Yeah.
How fearful were you yourself? Because, I mean, it's one thing to be afraid for the well-being of your father, your mother, and so on, but you as a young man, as a young child, for that matter, going to sleep at night knowing that there's this constant threat just looming over your head that at any point someone could pull you out of the house and stick you all in a van and you don't know what might happen to you.
Yeah.
How afraid were you through this?
Once we left here, it was around that age that I began sleeping with a knife under my pillow. Like I didn't, I don't even know if my mother and them knew that. I would have something under my pillow, and I would sleep with it with my hand on it. And if I didn't have, I couldn't sleep. And that became something that I only stopped doing probably within the last 4 or 5 years of my life.
Serious?
So that is the level of trigger that it was, and I had to analyze it as I got older because it just became a comfort thing for me, right? And I would be honest, even living in Trinidad, just living and existing in Trinidad, I'm sure I'm not the only person who's like that. Everybody has something in their room where if somebody break in their house, they could access it easily, you know what I mean? And to me, in a level, that's only wisdom. But sleeping with a knife under your pillow, it's a whole other thing. You know what I mean? And I remember my ex-girlfriend saying to me that, that was unacceptable behavior.
Mm-hmm.
She's not going to sleep next to me if, that's the case.
Yeah.
And me having to really, at first, being very like, yo, this is who I am, this is what, I'm ready for whatever. And having to now examine that part of myself and realize that, that level of trauma. But I think a lot of us who were affected by the coup have PTSD. I really think so. And I think, a lot of us have that. So I would look back on it and I would tell you that I wasn't scared because my reaction was kind of to take front, but obviously it was fear. It was a very extreme form of fear as a child because it's not normal for any 6-year-old to be sleeping with a knife under their pillow, right? And I remember very distinctly, obviously not wanting my mother and them to know that I had this knife or okay, your mother will act up, whatever. Nobody ever knew. And like me going in the kitchen and like sneaking it out or whatever, when everybody else sleeping, that kind of stuff. Like planning that stuff in my head as a 6-year-old, because I felt as though I had this responsibility to protect my mothers and my sisters.
You said that, throughout the course of the events of the coup itself, you didn't have, you had some idea that something was wrong on the outside. And based on your mother's reaction, you would have had some indication, based on the funeral shroud her taken out and so on, that is something very grave indeed that could have possibly fatal consequences. At what point, I don't know if it would have been in the months after or the years after, did you realize that, there were people who died, lost their lives on both sides of this?
Yeah.
At what point did you really realize that and did it hit home for you?
I was about started going through the book, and I realized that when they blew up the police station, people died. And when they went into the Red House, the security guard was killed, the guy at the door. And I started realizing, well, this was not bloodless coup. And that when the army was shooting at the building, people got killed, and then there was people from even the Jamaat side. There was one brother who died, And I think as a child, I didn't associate death in the way that I began to understand it at that point. And that's when I realized because I always felt as though, what happened was completely justified and people shouldn't have no other views of it and all that. I felt that way because of how I grew up and seeing what the police were doing and seeing how society was operating, or how I was told society was operating. And when I realized that people from the society, people's mothers, fathers, grandfather, uncle, people died, it began to be, it took another turn for me, and I began to think of it in a bit different way, and I began to do a bit more research to find out the other side about people who've been affected. Yeah, it was around that time, about 10 years ago.
How did that really affect your view of the Jamaat as an organization?
As I got older, and I started reading more about the coup and talking to different people, I began to realize that a lot of the young men, my father was 34, right? He was 34 when the coup happened. And I started to realize things were not as simple as I thought. It wasn't just a matter of a few righteous men coming out and deciding the society needs to change, and therefore, right, we're going to take this action to change the society. Because you began to hear that some men thought we were trying to create an Islamic society, some men thought the Jamaat was trying to become the ruling party, and we realized that many people went in there for different reasons. So if there wasn't a cohesive intention, then something wasn't exactly as I thought it was. I thought it was one aim, one head, everybody is on the same page. And then you began to hear talk about the army possibly being involved, but they didn't get involved, about certain political parties and political leaders who might have supposedly been involved, about outside involvement, all sorts of things you began to hear. And you realize that it's a cocktail of things and not just some simple black and white thing. But when you're a child, it's so easy to reduce things to black and white because you don't know much. But as you get older and you gather more information and you become a little more emotionally sensitive and you realize human beings are so layered, then you say, okay, there's more to this. I began to kind of suspend the beliefs that I had in terms of just one side being completely right and one side being completely wrong. You know what I mean? And that began to shape my older years and the ways that I looked at a lot of the people around me, what exactly they were doing, and the way in which I listened to politics. And I think I wanted to be a more avid student of history as well after that, because I began to understand that it didn't come from nowhere. So who were we and how did we end up where we ended up?
Based on your interactions, not just in your later years, but in your formative years as well, the interactions you would have had with the police based on your description was not always good.
No, it was never good.
Yeah, your perception of government and authorities would be somewhat doubtful, skeptical, mistrustful of their intentions.
Absolutely.
How has that shaped Mohammed Muwakil in 2020? How does that shape your worldview today?
I think even though many people know that there's corruption and that elected officials don't always have the people's interests at heart, I think a lot of people don't know how deep it goes. A lot of people don't understand how deep systemic corruption is embedded, how deep nepotism is embedded. And because of how I grew up, because I had very radical parents, they explained to me that, although it is the job of the state to oversee the people's funds and the people's money, the people's affairs, the truth is that many people get into politics to see for themselves. And so the people have to be monitors constantly. That's what has to happen. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. People have to consistently monitor their officials because at the end of the day, human beings are just human beings. You give a human being a certain level of power, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So a lot of our officials would have never wielded the kind of power that they wielded, and then all of a sudden they find themselves in charge of hundreds of thousands of people, in charge of millions of dollars, conversing with businessmen who would not have given them the time of day before that, but who now are literally bowing at their feet. And it takes a special kind of human being to not be turned and corrupted by that. So a large part of democracy running properly as a system is that the people must be vigilant. Because we really cannot, I mean, I would love to live in a world where people are just uncorruptible, but that's not possible. The best of us have been corrupted by things. You know what I mean? And far be it from people, again, who are immediately cast into that light, into power. Imagine one day you can't afford to buy a BMW, and the next day somebody coming and telling you, yeah, well, if you think for this contract for me here, you could get a BM real easy. You could get this, you could get a kickback, you could get a house, you could, you know. I don't know that every single man has the ability to be that righteous, to be that proper in and of himself. And even the ones who are, there will be moments of weakness. Every man have them, every woman have them, you understand? So it really must go in tandem. We can't just expect our public officials to do their very best all the time. We must exhort them to do better, you know what I mean? And they must learn to see, we must learn how to do it. And they must learn not to see the people exhorting them to do better as a threat, you know, but as a natural part of democracy.
Constructive criticism.
Absolutely. Nothing else don't make sense. Coming at people, cussing them, getting on, all them things don't make sense. In the end of the day, if it's not led by love, it will mash up over and over again. Because if you come at me, even if you come at me with the right thing, most people are going to be very defensive, first of all. And even if they hear what you're saying and they like what you're saying, they're not going to like the way in which you dealt with them. And in order to save face and to save their own respect, they want to deal with you first. And then they will say, I hear what you were saying, no. Well, you can't come at me so. You know?
Religion is an issue that could be used as both a unifying tenet to galvanize people, but it could also be used to divide. Based on your own upbringing, you know, do you subscribe to any particular faith in general?
I believe I'm a Muslim, but I think, you know, many Muslims, if they took a magnifying glass to my life, they might disagree. Islam is the submission to the will of the Creator of the heavens and the earth. And along the way, certain rituals within the religion itself, I lost connection with them because I felt as though it didn't connect me to what created me. So I believe that work is prayer. The way you live your life every single day, that's actually your prayer. Going to church on a Sunday or going to the mosque on a Friday or praying 5 times a day means nothing if you're not dedicating your life to the betterment of others, to the betterment of yourself, to elevating yourself in different ways. A lot of people, I think, I won't want to say they waste their time, but there's actual work to be done on the inside. We grow up and we accrue a whole series of you know, things that will hold us back, things that we need to get over as we go forward. And if you as an adult don't recognize in and of yourself that you need to do that work, then all the praying in the world is not going to fix that magically. You know, a lot of people do that, and I don't know if they feel like they're going to have some epiphany where you automatically be a better person, you automatically be a generous person. No, if you don't give consistently, you're not going to just be a generous person. If you don't try to tell the truth consistently, you're not going to be a truth teller. You know, if you don't try to stand up for the right thing when you see it happening, you know, even at your own peril, you're not going to be a strong person. You're not just going to be brave. These things don't just happen. God will just bestow that on you, and then all of a sudden. And even then, there still must be instances in which you enact those things for it to be known that it is true.
We are approaching, and by the time this video is posted, it will be the 30th anniversary of the attempted coup. What do you think, in your opinion, because I know you're very socially conscious, you actually take the time to sit down and analyze things. On a societal level, what do you think we've learned in the past 3 decades since the coup happened, or the attempted coup happened, sorry?
As a society as a whole?
Yes,
And
collectively.
There have been pockets of people who've learned things, but I don't think collectively we have not examined the 1970s collectively yet. We like to act like if that didn't happen. We like to act as though Randolph Burroughs wasn't running up in the hills and killing young people. Like there was a girl by the name of Beverly Jones who was pregnant at the time when she was shot, you know, and killed. And there wasn't a whole heap of Basil Davis, all these different people. We act as if that didn't happen. So 1970 didn't happen. And 1990 was less of a mass revolution. It was just a group of Muslim people. Nobody really bought into it. But people given the opportunity came out and destroyed their capital city. Totally kind of burned down the whole thing flat. Not just loot it, you know, burn it down. But we have to examine that. If people feel that they are part of a society, they feel included, they feel that there's justice, why would they come down and burn down the city? Why would they come and take things? And of course, there were some businesses that were protected because those people felt as though these people are on our side.
Mm-hmm.
But others, people just went at them and destroyed them. And we still have not asked ourselves why. I come like you in your house, and all of a sudden your 3 children pick up and start to beat the father. Beat him. Paul. He go to the hospital, he come back home, and nobody talked about it. For 30-something years, nobody spoke about it. That's madness. For not even 37 years, since 1970s, 50 years, nobody has said, why did this happen? You know? And we have to ask ourselves, 8 years after independence, we had 1970 riots, and young people was raiding police stations and stealing guns and shooting behind people and doing all kind of thing and trying to educate themselves to understand their blackness, whatever. That was suppressed and left alone. 1990 happened, it was suppressed and left alone. Now we're in 2020 and we see the world erupting again. And we have not asked ourselves the critical questions. And that is why I believe many in power are sort of afraid of what they saw. Just see a few young black faces looking angry because they know that there is an instance for anger to occur that has not been addressed. So to answer your question, no, we've not addressed it.
Switching back to your own personal experiences of the coup now, your dad, he was at TTT. At what point did you realize that, the coup had really come to an end and he was among those who was arrested?
Again, I don't remember specifically, but I would have seen the videos. I would have seen it on TV. My mother would have known. It may have been after that, but obviously it would have been after that point that we left. So I would have seen it on TV here. But I still don't think at that age I really understood what was going on in it. I don't think I fully, in some ways, when I look back on it, and even when I look at my life, I feel like there are things, because of the way I was raised and the way that I look at death and the way I look at life, there's some things that people take very seriously that I don't think I take as seriously as they do. I see these uprisings as a part of the creation of a civilization. Every major civilization that became anything and was remembered throughout history had grand uprisings. Just crazy things happened, civil wars, all that. And if we look at time in the space of our own lives, if we were to look at time in blocks of 70 and 80 years, then there's no way for us to understand these things. These things can throw us off. Something happened and it's, oh my God. But if we kind of could lift up, almost be like a drone over time, and just watch in scopes of, 1,000 years, millennia. Think of how life has progressed and how human beings have progressed over time. Because what we are looking at is the birth of Caribbean civilization. If such a thing will exist in the next 1,000 years, we don't know. We take ourselves real seriously right now. But will we exist in the way that we are now in the next 100 years, in the next 200 years? I don't know if that's true. I don't know. Will China become such a force in the world that in the next 500 years all of us, become Chinese? We just, the whole, some new Chinese empire ruling it. We don't know. We don't know. And we have to start thinking about things in larger terms. It's one of the reasons why we haven't been able to stop crime and that kind of stuff. We're still thinking about things in terms of this happened yesterday. This has been happening for the last 4 years. No. 10-year blocks, 15, 20. That's how things change. Things don't change in these short.